Enough already. You keep leaving your infant with us almost every day. Both Mom and I are really inconvenienced by this." I was taken aback by the sudden, angry call from my sister-in-law. "What are you talking about?" I asked, bewildered. My attempt to clarify only seemed to make her angrier. "Plain dumb, are you? You're unfit to be a mother if you can't even take care of your own baby." Her accusations were completely unfounded. "I don't even have an infant." "Are you mistaken?" I asked. "I have never left my child with you. My daughter is already 3 years old." Our claims weren't matching up, and her irritation was palpable, but it seemed my words made her realize something was off. "What do you mean this wasn't a simple misunderstanding?" she asked, her voice quivering. It turned out this wasn't just a case of confusion. My sister-in-law had been deceived. Someone had fabricated a detailed story, and the call from my sister-in-law was unraveling this web of lies. The deception was meticulously planned, but the truth was beginning to come to light. The final twist was an irony beyond imagination. My name is Haley. By day, I'm a salesperson at a major bank, juggling client visits. After work, I rush to the daycare where my 3-year-old daughter, Mabel, waits. "Sorry to keep you waiting, Mabel," I say as she runs toward me with a big smile. It's the moment my fatigue from the day vanishes. Here, I transition from a salesperson to a mother, diving into my mom duties. Once home, we have dinner, prepare for the next day, and take a shower before I put Mabel to bed. That's how my day ends. My husband, Luke, often comes home late due to work, so household and childcare duties fall largely on me. Luke and I met through work. He was a polite staff member at the company I visited for sales. His company, though small to mid-sized, was well-known and growing. Our relationship deepened over several meetings, eventually leading to dating. I was 36, and he was 30. His kindness and gentleness made me consider marriage. When I became pregnant, we were overjoyed and quickly got married, vowing to share both joys and sorrows and build a happy family. However, reality quickly diverged from my ideal. "Hey Haley, you left the laundry overnight again. Stains and odors can set in. It's important for a businessman to make a good impression. Don't you want your husband to always wear clean shirts?" We had chosen an apartment near my in-laws at Luke's request, but it soon became clear it was a nightmare for me. After marriage, I realized Luke hadn't truly separated from his mother. He was, in essence, a mama's boy, speaking to her almost daily and often complaining about me. To my dismay, most of their conversations involved grievances about me. After these calls, his mother would come over early in the morning to lecture me. "I'm doing the laundry now," I would explain, "but I couldn't move last night due to severe morning sickness. I know how important it is for a businessman to look presentable, but I wasn't being lazy." The persistent morning sickness sometimes made me leave work early or take a day off. And yet, I'd hear how nice it must be to sleep all day and skip work. "If you're taking a day off, at least finish the household chores perfectly. Luke is working hard while you're sleeping. Make dinner for him," she would say, seemingly oblivious to my struggle. Despite her own experience with pregnancy and childbirth, she couldn't seem to understand my situation. Exhausted both physically and mentally, I was continuously pressured. "Pregnancy isn't an illness. Don't be so soft." Am I the one who's wrong? I couldn't distinguish right from wrong anymore. I was simply too exhausted to think straight. Of course, pregnant women with big bellies feel tired. If you can't handle that, maybe you're not cut out to be a mother. My mother-in-law's criticism seemed relentless. "You're already 37, she'd say. "It's one thing for a younger daughter-in-law, but at your age, you shouldn't be whining." Despite never voicing complaints to my husband or mother-in-law, she always found a way to jab at me. Her clear dislike for the fact that I was older than my husband was evident. I couldn't change my age, but I hoped changing the environment might help. Maybe once the baby was born, she'd accept me. I hoped that a good relationship could be built through our child. Half a year later, I gave birth to my daughter safely, but my mother-in-law remained indifferent. During my maternity leave, struggling with the challenges of new motherhood, my mother-in-law and husband frequently went out together. When my husband returned home and saw the messy house, he'd report back to her, and she would come over to scream at me. This became my daily reality. As our daughter was born, my husband's attachment to his mother seemed to grow stronger. He couldn't seem to accept the role of a father and continued to cling to his old role as his mother's boy. Their bond only deepened, leaving me feeling isolated and overwhelmed. When our daughter turned 1, she started daycare, and I returned to work. Around that time, my husband began coming home later and later. One day, I saw his pay slip and was troubled. Despite working long hours and staying late, there was no overtime pay reflected. He would often come home after midnight, but his hard work wasn't showing up in his salary. I was puzzled. "Well, we're a small business," he explained. "Unlike big corporations, overtime is just part of the job. It's the same for most small businesses." But this wasn't just a few hours of overtime a month. It was excessive. "This is a violation of labor laws," I said. "It's too much. Why not talk to your company about it?" He turned red and raised his voice for the first time. "You want me to get fired, don't you? Don't do anything unnecessary." I was taken aback and didn't know how to respond. Why was he so protective of his company? There must have been another reason. Years passed, and now our daughter is 3. She's a bit asthmatic and visits the pediatrician regularly, but otherwise she's growing well. As usual, I was out on a sales call, the crisp winter air making my breath visible. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was from my daughter's daycare. I stopped on the sidewalk, my hands numb from the cold, and answered. The voice on the other end was panicked. My daughter had a fever. She'd been so energetic when I dropped her off this morning. Perhaps she caught a cold in this chilly weather. I cut my work short and rushed to the daycare. When I arrived, my daughter looked exhausted and was struggling to breathe. Her body was alarmingly hot. Realizing the situation was serious, I immediately took Mabel to the pediatrician. The doctor informed me that her asthma had worsened, her blood oxygen levels were dangerously low, and she needed to be hospitalized right away. I called my husband to let him know. "Mabel's in the hospital," I said. "I'm swamped right now, so you'll need to handle everything." "But why does she need to be hospitalized?" he asked, clearly unaware of our daughter's condition. It was evident that he had never taken an active role in childcare and knew little about her health. His lack of knowledge and concern was disheartening. It seemed he would use work as an excuse to avoid responsibility, leaving me to manage everything. I just wanted him, as a father, to show some genuine concern for our daughter, who was delirious with a high fever and struggling to breathe. As her mother, overwhelmed with worry, I longed for his support. Such a basic expectation of family support felt like a distant luxury. Mabel's symptoms had subsided with milk and medication, and she was finally sleeping. In the meantime, I rushed home to pack essentials for her hospital stay. Just then, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. I wondered why she was calling at such a hectic time. Maybe she had heard about Mabel's hospitalization and wanted to offer help, or perhaps it was another call filled with sarcasm. With a sense of trepidation, I answered the phone. "What are you thinking?" she began, berating me immediately. "Mabel's been hospitalized with severe asthma." I picked up the phone, only to hear another call filled with sarcasm. "Making your child develop asthma? It's your way of raising her that's the problem. You must be living in a filthy room and not cleaning properly. The air must be dirty too. No matter how much you deny it, the problem is clear. If you had paid more attention to her diet, this wouldn't have happened. You're probably feeding her food that triggers asthma. And what about Luke? Are you feeding him the same asthma-inducing meals in that filthy air? I won't let it go if something happens to him." I was incredulous. I didn't have time for such pointless lectures while my daughter was in the hospital. What did she mean by asthma meals? This was beyond the pale. "I'm heading to the hospital now, so I have to go," I said, ending the call abruptly. I knew she was furious, but I had reached my breaking point. Mabel's suffering was one thing, but her grandmother's accusations were too much. Did she not care about her granddaughter's well-being? Anger bubbled inside me, and my hands shook as I gripped my phone. I called my husband impulsively. I needed him to understand the gravity of the situation and support me through the hospital visits and home care. I didn't want to hear his mother's interference anymore. Instead of offering understanding, he echoed his mother's criticisms. "Mom's right, isn't she? You've been neglecting your household duties and using work as an excuse. Your lack of management caused Mabel's condition." His words were a blow. "I'm not neglecting anything. I may not be able to do everything, but I'm managing the basics," I retorted. I felt isolated and hopeless. The conversation felt like a waste of time and left me in tears. I hung up, feeling defeated. I took leave from work to focus on caring for Mabel and managing the household during her hospitalization. I barely had a moment to rest, constantly shuttling between the hospital and home. Meanwhile, Luke continued to come home late, leaving dirty laundry and trash scattered around. The table was cluttered with supermarket receipts and used tissues, and breakfast was left untouched. It was clear he had no intention of helping, and I found myself cleaning up after him daily, feeling increasingly helpless. One day, while I was tidying up at home, my mother-in-law showed up unexpectedly. "You left the laundry hanging on the balcony the other day," she began, her voice sharp. Luke's shirt was damp all night because of it. It was evident that Luke had been complaining about me again. I had spent the previous night at the hospital and couldn't return home. Couldn't Luke have brought the laundry in himself? I wondered aloud. "And the orange juice in the fridge is expired," she continued. "That's Luke's favorite juice. You should manage things better and buy fresh juice. If he likes it so much, he should finish it before it expires. He can buy his own juice," I retorted. She criticized me further, saying, "Neglecting household chores because you're caring for the sick won't do. You can leave Mabel at the hospital. Luke is working hard. Don't you think you should support your husband more? You're really a hopeless wife." I was utterly exhausted. My mother-in-law's words seemed to pierce through my numbness, but I felt too drained to react. Mabel was only 3 years old. How much could she do on her own? And Luke was 34. He should be capable of handling things himself. If my mother-in-law was so concerned, why didn't she take care of everything for him? Unable to hold back any longer, I let my frustration slip. "Why don't you handle it all if you're so worried?" "What did you just say?" my mother-in-law demanded, her tone harsh. Fortunately, my voice was soft enough that she didn't catch my exact words. "Don't mumble. If you have something to say, say it clearly," she shouted. Ignoring her, I turned my back. "I'm heading to the hospital now, so I'll have to go. Please buy the orange juice for him." I left the house with her voice trailing behind me. I needed her to stop bothering me. I was at my limit with exhaustion and stress. I hurried to the hospital where Mabel awaited. Neither my husband nor my mother-in-law visited her during her hospital stay, not even once. I had asked Luke several times to come home earlier, hoping he would show some concern, but he always refused, citing work commitments. After a few weeks in the hospital, Mabel had fully recovered and was discharged. She needed a few days of rest at home, and I felt a slight relief as her condition stabilized. However, Luke continued to come home late, showing no real concern for Mabel. Our conversations as a couple dwindled, and his indifference was palpable. My mother-in-law, meanwhile, called me almost every day, but never to offer help or inquire about Mabel's condition. Instead, she used the calls to criticize me. "She's discharged now, isn't she? Even someone as terrible as you should be able to manage the household chores perfectly. If not, you're a complete failure as a wife." The calls became more focused on personal attacks rather than practical advice. Her criticisms were relentless, and being labeled a terrible wife every day was taking a toll on me. I felt mentally exhausted. When I talked to Luke about it, hoping for some support, he responded dismissively, "You're called a bad wife because you're not trying hard enough. If you don't want to hear it, then try harder." As usual, he sided with his mother. "Don't come to me with this. I'm tired too. Your behavior is also why you're considered a bad wife. You should take better care of your husband. Not getting along with Mom is a failure in itself. You're making such a kind mother angry every day. Look at yourself, you're really hopeless." Instead of receiving the support I desperately needed, I was met with more criticism. Regretting my decision to confide in Luke, I left the room determined not to rely on anyone anymore. From that point on, communication between us ceased. Luke's return home grew later, and we barely spent any time together. He even began staying out overnight, sometimes for consecutive nights. When he did come home, he would drop his dirty clothes on the floor, pack fresh ones in his bag, and leave again. I had once accepted his frequent absences as part of his work, but that excuse no longer seemed credible. My mother-in-law's sarcastic calls continued unabated. Her remarks often hinted at the presence of another woman, and though she didn't need to tell me explicitly, I wasn't oblivious. During Mabel's hospital stay, while sorting through scattered receipts on the table, I came across one for women's stockings and underwear, purchases that Luke couldn't have made if he was truly working overtime. On my way back from the hospital one day, I ran into Luke's boss, whom I had met several times during my sales visits to Luke's company. His boss had even given a speech at our wedding and had been kind to both of us. "Our company prides itself on not having overtime," he said. "We even turn off the lights at the end of the workday." His words were a shock. Luke had been lying to me, spending his nights with another woman. The realization of his infidelity hit me hard. I had been struggling alone, torn between enduring the situation for Mabel's sake or seeking a divorce. I couldn't make up my mind. One day, an unknown number appeared on my phone. The constant barrage of calls from my mother-in-law had made me particularly sensitive to the ringing. I hesitated before answering, wondering who it could be. I hesitantly answered the phone. It was Luke's younger sister, who is 5 years younger than him and still lives with their parents. We rarely saw each other, our interactions limited to about once a year. She was busy with her own work and had a fulfilling personal life. "Enough is enough," she exclaimed. "Why do you keep leaving an infant at our house every day? Both Mom and I are so inconvenienced." I was taken aback by her sudden outburst. "What are you talking about?" My bewildered response only seemed to anger her further. "What do you mean, what are you talking about? A mother who can't even take care of her own baby is a failure." The accusation was completely unfamiliar to me. I don't even have an infant. I've never left a child with anyone. I've always taken care of my daughter alone. I was confused, so I took a moment to gather my thoughts. "Aren't you mistaken? I've never left my child with you. My daughter is already 3 years old. I don't have an infant." My claims didn't align with what she was saying, and her frustration grew. But my words seemed to make her realize something was off. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to piece things together. "I was told it's your baby. Mom and I are exhausted from taking care of this baby every day. If it's not your baby, then whose is it?" I had no idea who this child was that my sister-in-law and mother-in-law were looking after. "I don't know." "Who told you that, and who brought the baby to you?" "It was Luke," she replied, sounding confused. "He brings the baby, saying you asked him to." "I never said anything like that," I protested. "And my mother-in-law should know our daughter is Mabel. Why would she accept this unknown baby?" There was something inexplicable about their behavior, and it left me with a troubling feeling. We needed to find out who this baby really was. My sister-in-law agreed, and a few days later, I visited my in-laws' house. "Luke just brought the baby. He's here now," my sister-in-law whispered as she opened the front door. I nodded and quietly entered the house. Laughter drifted from the living room. Luke and my mother-in-law must be playing with the infant. I peeked through the door crack and saw Luke cooing at the baby in a high-pitched voice, his expression unnervingly calm. He had never spoken to our daughter that way. I was stunned. The evidence was clear, but a part of me resisted accepting the reality. "Okay, Daddy's going to work now. Be a good baby," Luke said, standing up and walking out of the living room with a smile. As he turned and saw me standing in the hallway, his face went pale and he froze, unable to speak. "Luke, what's wrong?" my mother-in-law asked, approaching with the baby in her arms and peeking out from behind him. Her confusion was evident as she saw me, and she desperately tried to shield the baby from view. "So you neglect your family and happily spend time with your mistress's child?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and betrayal. I had tolerated Luke's infidelity until now, but this was the final straw. All the pieces had fallen into place, and it was time to confront them both. The baby of his mistress. How dare you? Apologize now. I shouted. My mother-in-law, who had been visibly nervous, took over. The rude one here is you. You've been mocking me all this time. There's no way you didn't know. I turned to my husband, anger boiling over. Must have been fun cheating with such a young woman, huh? I said, scattering a stack of photos on the floor. What's this? My sister-in-law gasped as she looked at the photos. They showed my husband with a young woman, their arms linked as they entered a hotel. Other photos depicted the woman holding an infant, strolling around town with Luke and the baby. The child in these pictures was the same one they had claimed was mine and left at my in-laws' house. This baby, it's with your mistress, I said, glaring at Luke. This is the worst of it. My husband stood frozen, sweat pouring down his face. He was clearly caught off guard, unable to make any excuses. I've investigated everything, I said, feeling a cold sense of finality. I thrust the detective's investigative report at my husband. The woman in question was the daughter of one of his clients, and he'd been involved with her since she gave birth. All his late nights at work had been a lie. He'd been finishing work at his usual time and heading straight to her place. You're truly despicable, I said, my voice filled with anger. What were you planning to do from here? Trembling, my husband finally spoke. The woman's pregnancy had been an unexpected turn of events. He had hidden the fact that he was married, so she believed he was single. When she became pregnant, she demanded marriage, and he found himself at a loss. Eventually, he couldn't handle it alone and confided in my mother-in-law. At first, she was shocked and scolded him, but she soon warmed to the idea of the young woman, a president's daughter, and encouraged him to divorce me and marry her instead. However, since he couldn't marry her immediately due to his existing marriage, he concocted a story about family issues and struck a deal. The arrangement was that the woman could leave the baby at his parents' house whenever she went out. As a result, the woman started leaving the baby there almost daily. My mother-in-law, supporting the affair, agreed to take care of the baby. To keep it hidden from my sister-in-law, they fabricated a story that the baby was mine. How far were you planning to take these lies? I demanded. You deceived me, your mistress, her family, and even your own sister. My sister-in-law stood there, speechless and horrified. I'm sorry, my husband said, offering a weak apology to both of us. But I wasn't ready to let it go so easily. You owe more than just an apology to us. There's another family that's furious with you. His face went pale. What do you mean? Exactly what I said. I've already informed the family of his mistress about everything. How could you lie about being single to your client's daughter? This isn't just a personal issue, it could ruin your reputation and your company. No way, he stammered, collapsing to his knees, drained of color. I'm not a liar like you. Her parents are furious and said they're going to sue you. His confession stunned me. I'm not a liar, but you're certainly responsible for cheating and fathering a child with someone else. Blaming your mother won't change that. My mother-in-law, unable to stay silent, intervened. What do you mean, my order? You came to me for advice. I've been cleaning up your mess and taking care of the baby. You're the one who said to leave everything to you. Now look at the mess you've created. Their argument escalated with each blaming the other for the situation. Take responsibility, I said, my frustration boiling over. It's you who's irresponsible for having a child with someone else in the first place. The back and forth between them seemed endless, a pitiful display of deflection and denial. I stepped between the bickering parents and handed Luke the divorce papers. Let's handle this through lawyers from now on, I said firmly before walking out of my in-laws' house. My sister-in-law seemed just as fed up with Luke, and the confrontation came to an end. I moved forward without a backward glance, ready to start anew. The divorce was finalized with substantial evidence of Luke's infidelity and my testimony. He agreed to pay child support monthly. My daughter remained unaffected by her father's absence, as she had no significant memories of him. Luke's troubles didn't end with the divorce. His mistress sued him for damages and child support, a consequence of his lies and deceit. He was left financially devastated, unable to afford rent and forced to return to his parents' home. Juggling a day job and multiple part-time positions, he struggled to keep up with his financial obligations. The president of a client company, injured by Luke's deceit, cancelled their deal, leading to a loss of his professional standing. Eventually, Luke was forced to resign from his position and found it challenging to secure new employment. His mother's small pension and their savings were barely enough to cover living expenses, and their once close mother-son relationship deteriorated over financial disputes. His sister, overwhelmed by their constant demands, moved out to live independently. Months later, I passed by what used to be Luke's house. It had been demolished and replaced with a new building. Luke and his mother's whereabouts remained unknown. I had relocated to a new area, relishing the fresh start with my daughter. Despite the busy routine of work, housekeeping, and childcare, I felt fulfilled. "Mom, see you later," my daughter called cheerfully as she headed out for the day. "Have a good day," I replied, watching her leave. Another new day began, full of promise and possibility.